right, guys, so let's get our webinar today underway. Thank you for joining and for being on time. I'm sure we'll have a few more join as the time progresses. Today we're into our ID Masterclass. So this is where we dig into the topic of the month, which is about future-proofing your career and how knowing your ID can help you maybe get an edge on that compared to those who don't understand ID. But future-proofing your career and digging into the nuances. So in our last webinar a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about this topic more broadly. And today we want to sort of get into some like use cases and some problem solving where we talk about specifics. So if you, as we go through this, maybe think about, we're not going to get into the topic for another maybe 15, 20 minutes with some other things to do first. So think about, for where you're at in your career, what's most on your mind? Like, what is it that you find either gets in the way or you want to work on, not just in terms of your development areas, but when you think about future-proofing it, you know, when the way the world is going and where you see yourself playing in that, what are the things you need to address in your mind or become more aware of to feel like you're going to be at your best to, contribute and to gain as much as you can from the future. I'm going to first walk you through what we did last time, just a quick refresh, both for those who weren't there to quickly get a sense of the flow of the topic, and for those who were there to just get a refresh on it. And then welcome everybody. And then we're going to do what we call our PPI check-in, our peak performance check-in, and that's where we just take the time in our masterclass. We don't do it in our earlier Living in Stride webinar, but in the masterclass, because these are the people that want to dig deeper in, we use the webinar to also take a moment to check, like, how are we doing? Are we in stride? Are there things pulling us out of stride? And we use the brain thrust of this group to pull us into stride. And yes, Seema, the last topic was recorded, so you can go back and have a deeper dive there if you wish. Just for those who are new, one of the rituals that we have is that we record every webinar, and if you register for the webinar, you will be sent the recording, even if you can't make it. So, we find there's probably about double the number of people. If we have 50 people on a webinar, there's probably another 50 that register that can't make the time, but they do it so they get the recording and then they listen, and you can always join the subsequent webinar or send questions through and we'll address them and so on. So let me call up the slides and quickly give you a walkthrough. Where are my slides? Here we go. Right, guys, so this was the topic, future-proofing your career. And I'm just going to sort of flash through these. So what we were talking about was, why is it more important than ever? Like, what is it that's changed, and what are the implications of that we now need to be sort of keeping front of mind? What are the predictable chaos points? So when we look at all of the coaching and consulting that we do with leaders and teams around the world, there are some things that are tripping people up. Like, there is a need to be more collaborative, and some people shine in that space and some people really struggle with it. So where are you at on that scale? Managing politics, people tell you, I hate politics, and yet inadvertently some people fuel politics. So where are you at with that? If you're challenged by change, for example, how do you become more adaptable and flexible so that you're not seen as someone who's a resistor to change? And then self-promotion is a huge one. There's so many people that say, I hate self-promotion. I hate being in the spotlight. And yet, if you don't, bat for yourself, like, who else is going to do that? So what can you do to not have self-promotion get in the way? Now, when we did our last webinar, we didn't get to the self-promotion piece. So I want to make sure that we do cover time on that today. And as well as anything else on your minds around your careers. So let's see how we go. What we covered was, what do we have to stay on top? So what's changed? These were the things that we flagged that had changed. The new mobile workforce of being able to work from anywhere not only means that there's teaming implications, but things like global access to talent now. You can have team members that are from a different culture, don't have your language as their native language. There's total changes in the way teams are constructed. People have to now put their own boundaries in place. It's no longer done for you by virtue of, going to work and leaving work and 9 to 5 and so on, those sorts of boundaries that were there automatically, they're gone. Job security. People used to think that if you worked for the government or if you worked for the bank or even a big company, you're pretty safe. In fact, they used to pride themselves on, tenure. And now, not only is it sometimes seen as best to be mobile, but even when you're with some of these larger organizations, it's not a guarantee that you have long-term, security. AI, artificial intelligence, is exciting on the one hand, but like most exciting things, it's also threatening and concerning to people around, well, what are the implications for my role and even potentially my business? So these are just some of the big ones. There might be others as well. We weren't trying to be exhaustive. We're just painting the picture that over the last even 5 years, right sort of around COVID, pre-COVID, from then on in, there's been a lot of change in the way we work and where the world's going in the future. So we talked about some of the implications, which I've sort of covered in explaining that. And then we moved into strategy. So what we were saying was no matter what the issue is, the first place to always go to, now that you know about ID, always, always, always is check yourself and are you in stride? Because no matter what strategies we can give you based on your ID, if you're not in stride and being true to yourself, right away you're compromised. So that's always our number one go-to strategy. Secondly, making sure that you think about what are your boundaries. I had a guy in a workshop last week, when I talked to him about boundaries as a result of this webinar, I said, we should talk about boundaries because he was getting pulled from one direction to the other. He said, Paul, it's funny you raised that topic. I had a talk with my wife about it, and I actually want to talk to my boss and change my whole role, But he had to get very clear, and it was quite a challenging thought process and conversation with his wife and then with his boss to make, a significant pivot in his career. Teaming, there are people that don't, as young workers entering the workforce, if they're working virtually, the idea of having teammates and standing around the water cooler or sharing a coffee, morning tea, lunches together, that's no longer a given for a lot of young people. Those of us who have experienced that over time cherish a lot of the skills that taught us around, communication, socialization, how to just work with people differently. And then brand awareness. People could observe you without you needing to do too much, but now when you're working virtually, you're even more invisible. So how do you become more visible, whether it's around your work, your personality, your needs? How do you take care of that in an increasingly invisible work environment, potentially invisible? So digging into what we call the strategies for the strategies. Like, it's one thing to say, stay in stride. Now, how do you stay in stride? How do you set your boundaries? And then the third level would be, and how do you set your boundaries for your ID? So just like we talk about having level 4 questioning to understand what do people really mean when they say one thing or another, there's also the concept of having level 4 strategy. So the strategy for the strategy. So if you want to get down to specifics, we can spend quite a lot of time on each of these topics. And we'll dig into some of those nuances today. So let's start with the first step around being in stride. By the way, I did have some, we did sort of start, talking about some ID applications. This matrix was just to show you or provoke some thinking that depending on what direction your ID goes, here are some of the things that might be on your mind around futurizing your own career direction, and success. So if you're in the verified drive, maybe there's an issue around collaboration, maybe it's trust, leading and managing via influence rather than authority. Whereas you come down to the avoid authenticates, maybe there's an issue for you around decisiveness. There's generally not an issue with collaboration. That ID thrives on collaboration, but confrontation can be a challenge, So how do you deal with these things when they're not your nature? So we'll go through this in our problem solving shortly. So I'm just sharing it with you so you can be thinking about what might be relevant to you for where you're at right now, thinking about your career. Before we go on to the PPI check-in, are there any questions or comments that anybody has that they'd like to share at this time? Okay. Well, then let's go to our peak performance check-in. And probably the easiest way to do this, guys, is in the chat. If you just put your score on a scale of 0 to 10, what we say is, if a 10 is you being on that green line there, green line being the green arrow, is you're traveling through life like in stride. You know, you're on the path of success for you, not success meaning monetary or title, but success being you're thriving, you're in stride. You know, what you do energizes you and brings the best out of you. Whereas if you see those arrows out to the left and out to the right, that's saying there are forces in life that pull you out of stride, off track, and we're all vulnerable to them. No matter how much you know about, you know, self-awareness, those forces exist. And so it's about catching yourself, knowing your early warning signals, and then having strategies to get back in stride each and every day. You can start your day in a really good place and an hour later be way out of stride, and vice versa. So it's not about finding the big role that suits your makeup. It's also about knowing how to calibrate the journey so that when things pull you out of stride, you can get back in stride, even while you're in the discussion, knowing how to pivot and reframe things, change your perspective so you get back in stride. The more self-aware you are, the faster you can get back on track. All right, so you might want to put down your score on a scale of 0 to 10. If 10 is you're really in stride and a 1 is you're way out of stride, what's the number that comes up for you today? You can see we've got a lot of 8s. 2 or 3, 7. Thanks, Scott. It's interesting you're saying there about being an outlier. It's yes, in the sense of the score, but it's also interesting for you, given you're a completer, like with your ID 3577. You know, it's your nature to want to be a part of. So your ID is an absolute natural team player. So being a part of is where you thrive. The feeling of being an outlier, whether it's here or whether it's, you know, in anything else, it's you to either then want to go and be a part of that group or pull them towards you. So that I guess the operative word is together. You know, a team, for example, is all about what we do together. So would you like to share what the 3 means? Like what's going on that had you sort of put down a 3 today?
Yeah, absolutely. You can hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah, so my organization's going through a tremendous change right now in terms of reductions in staff and reorganizations, you know, difficulties kind of setting direction. So I'm finding myself somewhat on an island. I'm normally a bridge builder. I bridge, you know, between teams as my role, and I'm a connector. And right now, like you
Yep.
mentioned, I'm an outlier. So that feels very frightening.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen to the word, like, you know, you said frightening. Last week we're talking to some people about things that were happening. They used the word terrifying, you know, and you don't sit there trying to concoct the words, but when your body, which is, you know, the body and mind work together, and when you use words like frightening or terrifying, I mean, it's quite interesting to observe. Okay, that projects an energy within, you know, and that energy is either working for us or against us. Just like if someone said, "Oh, it's amazing," or "It's, you know, so exciting," that's a really positive energy. So it's interesting when you use words like that. It's not surprising that you come up with a score like a 3. You wouldn't put down you're an 8 and something is frightening, you know. So you're very consistent here, which is good. And Thema, I saw you put down a 2. What's happening for you?
My role's been impacted, so I think I was in stride probably a couple of months ago, and now I'm completely out of stride, or how I feel out of stride. I've got other sort of issues happening with my husband's job as well, so I think all of that has just
Oh, wow.
a little bit out of kilter. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can talk about some of this today. What would be wonderful is if through some strategies that we can share for you, Seema, and even for you too, Scott, I'm sure that's one of the reasons you probably dialed in, was to get some insight as to how can you get back in stride, and then beyond that, what are some specific things you could do to start to, redirect your career, especially if you're both in that tricky situation. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for sharing so authentically. That's the first step, like when you put it out there. I mean, who knows what can come from today, but it's great that you're here. Would anyone else like to talk about their score and where they're at on the peak performance scale?
Oh, let me just mention something that I said that I'm a solid 8. But that changed from this morning where I felt like I was a solid 10. So I was feeling really good this morning, and you can hear that I've got like this cold out of my control, and I really try to focus on my health today. So all the trajectory looked good. And then here we are at an 8, and I think I think it does. It changes day to day. It changes for some of us hour to hour, as unexpected things occur, and but it's always good to check in with where we are on this spectrum here. So yeah, I wish you would have asked this a couple hours ago.
Okay.
I want to know what Judy's doing actually with that 10.
I would be happy to share what I'm feeling.
What's happened for you, Judy?
After 12 years of chronic fatigue, I have found the answer. I am now well, I'm strong, I have energy, and when I have energy, I would say there's very little that can take me out of stride. When I don't have energy, I feel like I'm at the effect of everything that's happening. And with this experience, I am just so grateful. And that's where I am right now. I am grateful for all the support that I've had, for having the commitment and the determination to not stop until I found the answer. And that's what's present for me. And it feels really wonderful to be here and to be in stride.
Well, congratulations on having the tenacity to stay with something relentlessly. Yeah, well done, Pam. But stay with something relentlessly for 12 years. That's incredible. And kudos to you for finding the formula that's working for you, Judy. That's wonderful news.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would just like to say,
Thank
we
you.
might be talking about this some, but I have myself at a 7, and I think looking at all this stuff, I think for me within my career, which is why I'm here today, I feel like I'm kind of complacent with where I'm at, but at the same time, I'm kind of fearful to even go anywhere different because of the way that Cisco's been laying off people. And I've been at Cisco for 25 years, but I was laid off once and then rehired. So the job market, I feel like that's why I'm a 7. It's just because everything else seems to be going great, except here I am at work, kind of just where I am, complacent, not really ready to do much about it because fearful of any change, and seeing all these friends of mine that still don't have jobs after months and months of being laid off. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, is trying to figure out how to boost my confidence with that.
They're great points, and thank you for sharing. We'll make sure we get some time to give you some insight that could be helpful to you today? Anybody else? All right, so let's dig into this. I might just drop the slides for a second while we talk about some of the situations that we've got here. Let me, sorry guys, let's stop sharing. Get all the screen back. There we go. So let's start with Seema. I might start with you. And some of what we're going to talk about here will be relevant to you too, Tracy, because you're both strong verifiers. And then after this, we'll go to you, Scott, and talk about your ID, and that might provoke other thoughts and comments from everyone else. And keep in mind, this is a brains trust. So I'll start, but if some of you have got suggestions that you'd like to put in place, or you feel like empathetically that you've been there and there were things that work for you, like feel free to come in too. The whole point with the peak performance indicator too, just to sort of, I can see some of you are new to this, to keep in mind. First of all, it's absolutely possible to live life as an 8, 9, or 10 every single day. There are many people that do. And even people like Amanda, I saw with your score, for someone whose ID can be really hard on herself and not someone that wants to blow her own trumpet as and avoid improvise. You can see with Amanda's score, that one in improvise, she's not going to big note the score. But even for Amanda, you put 9.5, which is, it's wonderful to see you, of all people, back at that level again. And that's probably one of the best scores I've seen from you. So obviously things are going very well in your world. And it's not because things happen to be going well. I'm sure you've had to put some work into calibrating things. In fact, maybe that's a good place to start, because given we're going to talk about Seema and there are some similarities, and there's been times when you haven't been as in stride. What is it that's happened recently for you that's gotten you to the 9, or like what have you done to get to the 9.5 that you shared?
Hi everyone, thanks Paul. Well, I've actually been doing a lot of work this year. Just to give you guys some background, this time last year I was on the verge of burnout. I wasn't enjoying motherhood. I hated my job. I was having really serious problems with my husband. Yeah, things were not good. I probably was putting 6 or 7s here, but I was probably a 3 or a 4. And I've always really studied ID and joined the sessions, and I started the new year and just decided to implement a lot of the things I already knew and just focus on myself, really. So I had to learn to say no to a lot of people, and I learned to say yes to my needs and everything that ID teaches us. And it's been a journey, but yeah, I don't know. I can't help to smile because it is just I'm just so happy. I can't. Everything's great. I found my passion for my job again. I love it. I love being a mother. I'm having the best time. I love my husband. You know, like everything's just so great. And there's lots of challenges as well, obviously, always. But I just feel energized. I'm happy. I don't know. Yeah.
So Amanda, I just have to check, it's been a year. So is it the same husband?
Yes. Still the same husband, and he's a 2738. So quite the opposite for me, for those who don't know. So you can imagine what a challenge that is. But we figured divorce would probably be more expensive than therapy. So no, just yeah, and he supported me a lot this year and helped me make the changes we needed in the business for me to be where I am in personal life. So it's hard to say what I've done specifically, but it was probably, really focusing on me, giving myself more time, to respecting my own pace. That's very important, because, as an avoid improvise, I need time to think things through, do things by myself, not rush, not feel pressured. And being married to Joe, he's always 10 steps ahead, and he's always got a lot going on, and that's what makes him being in stride. And I've realized I can't compete or try to keep up with his level. So it's just not good for my own health. And so we've hired more people to support him in the business. We've created some distance between us in the business, which has improved our personal life as a couple. I'm working a lot less. I'm exercising. I'm focusing on my exercise. I found out this new habit of the 5 a.m. wake up, and I'm doing that. And so I'm up by myself with no one, just having a coffee in silence, just thinking, just planning my day, and I'm on top of my game. It sounds crazy. I don't know. It's good.
Isn't it interesting how you've still got the same child, same husband, same job, but it's gone from one end of the spectrum to the other because something else has changed, and yes, you might be now taking better care of yourself in terms of fitness and so on, but it is interesting. You haven't had to change husbands, change children, change jobs to get to that better place. It was something else from the inside. And
Yes.
Let me share some insights, knowing your ID and for the benefit of the team, and in the context of futurizing future-proofing our careers. So the first thing you did really was put your own oxygen mask on, and for a lot of people, we're so busy trying to take care of other people and, and meet needs and expectations. But the first thing you did was take some time at your own pace to put your own oxygen mask on. We would simply call that getting back in stride, but it's done by doing it your way, which in your case, being an avoid improvise, that time on your own and at your own pace is really important. What's really beautiful about the 5 a.m. wake up strategy is that the way a completer, when you add in that you're a completer, and so Tracy, this would be true for you, and Seema, you're only a 5 in complete, but it would still be of relevance for you. When you feel like you get started your way and you're not starting like just reacting to life, but you have time to get settled in the privacy of your own time, your own mind, and just having that breathing time to feel like you can plan and think and work some things out and just feel like when you then come back to get started, you're already ahead. That feeling of being ahead propels you further ahead. So I would wholeheartedly agree with Amanda's strategy of even if it's not your normal, get up earlier so that you can just have that time for yourself to plan and think and strategize and come back to get started and notice the difference that makes for what you then accomplish through the day and how you feel about the day. And the hard part is that when you're feeling really low and out of stride, it's harder to do that. I mean, right now for Amanda, having been on a roll, it would be easy to get up tomorrow at 5 a.m. But back when you started, it's harder. But you don't focus on how hard it is to do it. You focus on the trust of knowing what it's going to do for you and lean into it, and it will serve you well. So that's the first thing. I would say putting your own oxygen mask on and getting that thinking and solitude time at the beginning of your day. You could take the same block, say it was 1 hour of time that you spent. If you spent that at 7 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not the same. It's like a significantly reduced value to you. It's about doing it at the beginning so you feel ahead. That's the secret sauce there. And some people, I say that because some people go, oh, but I'm not a morning person. I'm like, you need to become a morning person to break through this, because if you've got like Amanda's type of ID and Seema and Tracy, where you're a complete or not avoid complete, but avoid improvise and say 5 and above on complete, that is the secret sauce. And if we were to go and find everybody else with your ID and say to them, like I'm looking at Ian right now. It's exactly how Ian starts his day. And Ian, I didn't see your score, but you're always very in stride. But I know that's how you start your day, and it's not just about staying fit. I'm sure you do it because it sets you up for success for the day, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm an 8. A plus, but I was going to say absolutely. I was just sitting there watching, nodding, and going, yep, absolutely. The other thing, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'll throw it in while I'm there. The perspective change as well, Amanda, is huge. You might have been going to say this, Paul. You said it.
Huge.
Actually, I picked it up. But for a use verified, you change your perspective, and particularly with the complete drive as well, you go, well, I'm not going to just focus all on what's going on at work. I'm going to focus on this and take a more holistic. It shifts your thinking, and that's where the 5 a.m. helps, because that's the time you can really think without interruption, without anything else happening. And if you can shift your perspective and go, well, okay, there's this is not working, but this is, and this is, and this is, it actually spirals the right way, not down the negative spiral. It's the positive one. So I think it, for the use completes on the call, it's huge, that strategy. I would highly recommend it.
And I think because we need that time. Oh, sorry, Paul. I was just going to say, because we need that time by ourselves, what I was doing is I would start the day already by Joshy calling me when he wakes up. And then throughout the day, I'm thinking, I need to I need to think, I need a moment. And then I would leave that until 8 p.m. and then I'm exhausted and then my brain's not. So it just, whereas now I'm like, I need that first. That's the first thing I'm doing. And I'm even writing my journal as well. So I force myself to write something I'm thankful for. Like you said, Ian, it shifts the perspective on, what's good, what's happening, and it's positive. So,
No, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think I want to come. Thank you, Amanda. Great sharing. Ian, thank you for the comment on perspective as well. So what's important here, guys, to Tracy and Seema as strong verifiers, what gets you in stride is when you feel like you're in control. And when you had your career taken away from you, straight away you feel like, well, I'm in the lap of the gods now, and I'm not in control. So to Ian's point, it's all about perspective, because there's another perspective, which is you're 100% in control if you want to be. Like if you hand the dice to, in this case, Cisco, for example, and you go, okay, my life is depending on how you roll the dice, then, yep, you're not in control. But you can take the dice back and go, you know what, I'm in control. So let me share a few things about perspective with you. I know so many people, and I love Cisco. I've supported that company in the team and leadership development space for 25 years. In September, it was 25 years. I have a great deal of affection. I have a lot of great friends there. I love the company, and they've been very good to me as well. But I've also seen people go through the turmoil of a layoff, and 6 months later, so many of them have landed in roles that they love, are earning, as good or better money, and actually things have significantly improved. And many of them will say, oh, I didn't realize I was so marketable. If I'd have known I was going to land here, I wouldn't have been stressed about it. I'm like, it says one thing about Cisco, it's such a marquee company. Everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but the majority of people are incredibly marketable. It may not feel like that to you when you're, in the state of being let go, but stay strong, stay positive, stay in control, because you are very marketable, both of you. And, if you take into control that you're going to control your destiny, and when people change it on you, you go, okay, that was their decision. It's also their loss. So let me go and find what's next. You can be in control. And what happens is, if you focus on the things that are in your control rather than things that you feel are out of your control, you immediately get back in stride. So, for example, you might say, I'm going to focus on my fitness and health. I'm going to I'm going to take care of that, and my relationship, some planning time, how I spend my day, what I go after in terms of my next, career opportunities. there's so many things that you can decide, I am going to be in control of these things. I can't control if someone's going to call me back. I can't control if they're going to give me a job, but I can control how many people I approach. And if I reach out to try and get connected to people, you know, and invariably it's a numbers game. And the thing you learn in life, you know, the longer you spend on this earth, is that everything always works out. And the things that we stressed about 10, 20, 30 years ago, feeling like it was going to be the worst, there's actually a reason it's going the way it is. And the reason is always a gift. It may not feel like that in the moment that you experience it, but if you stay with the journey, it always unfolds to be a source of value and like a gift. And I remember someone saying, if it doesn't feel like a gift, it's only because you haven't finished unwrapping. Keep unwrapping. Stay with the journey. And I have found that those perspectives of control what you can control, see it as a gift that you're still unwrapping, and stay in that state of mind. But that's you controlling your own perspective. The one thing that no one can take from you is your perspective. So choose to see it as a gift that you're unwrapping, that the journey is unfinished. And I remember going through this with my marriage a few years ago, and it was horrible. I remember feeling like sick in my stomach with what was going on for 18 months. But I still had to work, and it was hard work to sort of go, I know it's a gift. I know I haven't finished unwrapping, and I know that at some point this will explain itself and it will all make sense, but it's not a very fun journey. And I used to compare it to like my personal training sessions, where they're not very fun while I'm doing them. They certainly don't look pretty, but at the other side, I always feel so much better. And if you, those of you who know my situation now with Susie and our life together, it's magical, you know. And if I'd have known what was coming, I would have been so happy going through it all, because I see now where it's landed me, you know. And the challenge is to maintain that perspective while we're going through it. So its perspective is everything for verifiers. Maybe it's true for other tribes as well, but focusing on what you can control and choosing to be in control. Like, you can't control, as I said, whether someone offers you a job, but you can control how you present yourself, you know, and you can control that you go after enough of them. And staying in that strong in-stride space, that's the secret to getting back to that place of being in stride rather than feeling like it's being done to you. That's the worst feeling for a verifier. Now, if you add on to that, Tracy, your comment, and it's a great comment about, you know, you're feeling sort of, you didn't use the word stuck, but I think it was like, you said complacent, but there's a comfort, but then there's a fear, you know, and that too in improvise can be a real nuisance at times, because it traps you, or it you know, it's like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And therefore it holds you in the current state, right? And even it holds you there, and it's your strongest drive. So of course it's going to be the more dominant one. But even while another part of you is saying, but I don't really want to be in the comfort zone. I want to grow, and I want to develop, and I want to experience, but then you know, I'm stuck here because of the fear factor. You know, at the end of the day, again, being aware of your ID does allow you to say, I don't want to be stuck in fear. I don't want to live another day from a place of fear. I want to live from a place of courage and confidence. And again, when I went through my marriage breakdown, I remember one of the counselors I was seeing, I saw many of them. One of them that I saw said to me, are you coming from a place of fear and anxiety, or love, courage, and confidence? And that was a choice. The same conversation that I would go into with trepidation, because where I was with, you know, full of fear and full of anxiety. When I made a conscious shift, and it was a conscious shift, yeah, okay, if I was coming from a place of love and courage and confidence, what would I say? How would I approach this? And it was still nerve-wracking to do it, but it helped me get more conscious about shifting to a better place. It was amazing, the change. And I'll tell you what happened that was the secret. It's about understanding vibration. When you vibrate fear, guess what comes back? fear or the equivalent. It's a vibration of something equivalent. When you vibrate love, courage, and confidence, guess what comes back? Positivity, enthusiasm, gratitude, encouragement. Like it's similar or an equivalent. It's like that every action has an equivalent reaction. An equivalent positive energy comes back. And I have found that to be an absolute truth. Even topics that I would have sworn were going to land me in hot water, when I approach the same topic from that place of love, courage, and confidence, I found that because I did take a different approach, the reactions I got back were like shocking to me in the most positive way. So a way of using your whole ID, Tracy, to say, well, if I'm someone who works best when I'm in control and perspective is everything, being a verifier, one way to mitigate the fear is to intentionally shift to a place of, if I was confident, like that put on mugs, if no one was watching, sing like no one is listening, dance like no one's watching. If you could live like that, what would you do? And then do it. And it will be nerve-wracking, but here's the thing. You're a risk-averse person, and you just swap the definition of risk from the risk of embarrassment or making a fool of yourself to avoiding the risk of complacency and living a life where in 5 years or 10 years' time, you look back and say, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I stayed stuck. And that is the worst feeling. I think Ian and I were just in an offsite where someone said a similar thing, where they said, I can't remember the example, I don't know whether you remember it, but they were avoiding improvising and they were stuck. And they said the risk of staying stuck is I hate it. And I will face into the fear that I feel because I'm way more conscious about growth and success and making a difference in the world. And the risk of not doing that is a way bigger risk to them than looking a fool, So it was shaping the definition of risk and using that power of perspective to annihilate the paralysis of the fear.
Yeah, I was going to say, Paul, it's like what you said just resonated completely with me as well, because that's kind of how I'm feeling at the moment. So I think I have to just reframe, that fear factor and that nervousness that I have about stepping out into the big wide world. And, really, like you said, go out there with sort of that courage and confidence and that positive reframing of the experience that I've had at Cisco for 17 years and what I can do with that, as opposed to going, oh my gosh, I haven't been out there for 17 years. What's the market like? Am I going to be marketable?
Seema, I have the benefit of knowing you personally, and I mean, you are just naturally a really positive, enthusiastic person who was so good at what you were doing there and so valued. I mean, this isn't about you not having a future because you weren't performing or you weren't valuable. This is just about someone else trying to meet a number and going, okay, we're, and changing the roles, as I'm sure it is for Tracy and probably for Scott too. So the challenge at the perspective thing is, don't take it personally. There's someone out there, there's another leader and another company that hasn't yet met the gift of Seema Hine or the gift of Tracy Carell, or of Scott. And that's still to happen. That's still the unwrapping that's still to happen. And walk into that space with confidence, with courage, because honestly, Seema, you're outstanding at what you do. And someone else is going to really get the value of that. That's a big loss for Cisco.
Thanks.
So I know we're spending a lot of time on this topic, but think about it, guys. One of the best ways to future-proof your career is to be someone who's a positive energy source. If you're in stride and turning up as a 9 out of 10 every day, people think twice about wanting to let you go because they get up on your energy, and the vibration that you bring. So it really is such a valuable strategy. But I want to pivot to you and talk about you and future-proofing your career and where you can go to. So one of the first things to keep in mind is about leadership. I don't know, have you been in a leadership role, Scott, until now, or what's the role? Leadership?
Yeah. several times.
Have you done much cross-functional leadership, or has it all been pretty much managing functional teams?
No, I've worked across several different functions, but always within kind of an information technology space. So never outside in marketing or
How have
finance.
you found your success? How have you found the difference between leading a cross-functional effort versus the functional team? Do you feel like you're the same? Do you feel like you really shine in one versus the other? How would you comment on that?
Yeah, I enjoy cross-functional. I like putting together different groups of people. Often they have trouble communicating between each other, so I can provide that bridge.
I want to give you a couple of tips here that are likely magic for you going forward. Your ID as a cross-functional leader is outstanding. And when people dig into it and reflect on it, and I'd encourage you to do this, your effectiveness as people tell us their effectiveness as a cross-functional leader is 10 times more effective than when they're leading functionally. And when they're leading functionally, they're still effective, you know, like they're still seen as really successful. There's a lot of people and a lot of, in the industry you're in, it's a sea of verifiers. Like on our research, 70% plus of people are verifiers. And they're saying they want collaboration, but they're verifiers trying to collaborate. And I'm one too. And verifiers struggle with keeping things cross-functional because they take ownership and it invariably becomes a silo. The space that you want to run to is cross-functional leadership and leading change efforts and transformational, initiatives is where you need to go. Like with your experience and especially with your ID, if you found companies going through transformation, which is like every company on the planet, but you went and lent into the transformational initiatives that some of the big hairy ones those guys have got going on, in a leadership role, you would thrive and you would shine and like really stand out in that space. So I don't know your history, but I would really encourage you to go there and go there with that sense of confidence and courage that we were talking about. Because when it comes to cross-functional leadership, there aren't many people with your ID and you would be a standout, just because you're so different to everybody else. And it's a time where you, like we started by saying, you don't want to be a standout, like you don't want to be the exception or the outlier, but there are times when it's good and you can use it to your advantage, right? To be the standout example of cross-functional leadership and use that to your advantage. And the fact that you've got the complete drive as a completer, you're going to keep those things together. So when you've got a naturally collaborative instinct and the nature of completers and teaming is about achieving something together, you're going to do it in a way that doesn't even seem like you're doing it. It's going to be so natural, but it's going to have a massive effect on those initiatives. And so lean on them as your strengths. Like if you start putting a plan together and what you need the two things you need to get going and get that number right back up to a 9 or a 10 is start collaborating, start talking to people. Because as an avoid verifier, you don't need time to sit and think. That's not the secret sauce for you. That's what verifiers do. But what you need to do is start talking to people, collaborating with people that you know and like and trust that can help, brainstorm some possibilities. Because if you've got hope, the improviser needs hope. And having a vision of where you can go, the possibilities of what you can do. And I'm saying transformational efforts. And if you then got a plan as a completer, like who are the people you're going to go and talk to? If you put a plan together of the 6 sort of mentor type people that you can go and talk to tomorrow to start brainstorming possibilities around transformational efforts and where are there maybe some openings. Once you begin and once you see that plan and you've got that and you start making progress on that plan, and we came back together and did that peak performance check-in again, your number would be up. And it's not about whether you've got a new job. It's about having a plan that's positive and inspiring for you personally that you are starting to make progress on, and away you go.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. The challenge that I had is the mentors keep leaving. So the ones that you're talking about, so collaboration has always been easy for me to do. But when the sponsors change, that becomes a problem.
Yeah. So take control of your mentors, so that the mentors are of your choosing. Like there could be leaders that you just know, and they're people you like and respect, and you just reach out to them and say, hey, I really appreciate the connection we've had. I'd love to lean on you as a mentor as I go through this next phase and check in with you and talk. I mean, there isn't a person that would say no to that. I mean, it's such an honor to give you some time, and whether it's 10 minutes or whether it's an hour, I mean, most people would love to play that role, and I'm sure they'd feel honored to do it. So reach out to them and start that, put that plan together, even if it's just a case of I'm going to research where are the companies I know of that are going through transformation. It's not growth. It's not about growth. I mean, it is about transformation. They might be going through growth as well, but get into the areas that are going through significant transformation. And call me as one of them, because I'm connected to a bunch of companies and I know some are going through transformation. I don't know enough about your background yet to know where to point you, but if I learnt more, I'm sure I could potentially connect you to some people that you might be worth talking to. Any questions or comments from what we've been sharing so far?
Yeah, Paul. One thing I think Amanda didn't say, but I think went under sort of the radar, was that she took ownership for her stuff. And
Yep.
I would ask her the question, imagine she didn't actually change her hubby, but after she changed her perspective, took ownership, then he may have responded with some changes. But I think the key issue is that she took the ownership of her stuff and not changing others. Yeah. Well, it wasn't said, but I think that's an underlying principle.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Yeah, that's really true. Well, guys, in the time we have left, I want to talk about self-promotion. I promised you that, and I know we missed that last time. So I'm sure everyone here who's avoid improvise would feel that self-promotion is a challenge. It's you hate being in the spotlight. You hate the noise being about you. The idea of going and beating your own drum is almost a sickening feeling for an avoid improvise. It's just got, feels dirty. But I want to ask, first of all, even though that might be a truism for avoid improvise, is there anyone that feels like they've combated that yes, I'm still an avoid improviser, and there was a time where I didn't like it, a little bit like what Amanda went through, where by changing your approach to it all, you've sort of combated the situation. Is there anyone who feels like they've, reversed the effect of not wanting to self-promote, so now doing a much better job of promoting and managing their brand and their value?
For the first, I think this is helpful as well. The fact that if you change the name of self-promotion to something else, as an avoid improvise really helps. I mean, the self-promotion in itself, as an avoid improvise, I cringe. But as soon as I say being recognized, getting for my value I add, or something along those lines, making sure the team get recognized for what they do. And I mean, this is probably my Verify speaking, but it's like it's being acknowledged for, for the value I add or something. You reframe it and it'll be different for each person. But so reframe what Paul would say is self-promotion as an avoid improvise. What is it for you? Put in your own terms. And for me, it's about making sure my value is acknowledged, or my team's value is acknowledged, something along those lines, in case that's helpful.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, it's a good point you make, because I do notice it's, avoid improvisers aren't backwards in commenting on other people's value, like sharing and promoting, say, your team members. It's more about when it's about yourself. Tracy, it looked like you were going to share something, but I didn't know whether you were or not. I don't want to throw you in the deep end, but I don't want to have you miss out either. Are you good? Okay, good. So what I've found is, to Ian's point, the concept of promoting, being in the spotlight, having it be about you, when the focus is about you, that's what is the turnoff. But if you feel like you're teaching and educating others, and somehow the focus is about other people understanding, I don't know what it is yet. I'm still learning myself, but it sort of changes the energy about what you're doing. So if it's like, I'm just trying to help other people understand what's going on, because to Ian's point, you may not want to self-promote, but it bugs the crap out of you when you aren't valued and acknowledged and appreciated for what you do. You know, you don't want a big noise about it, but you don't want to be entirely missed either. And so I think when it's more like just educating other people so people understand this is what I've done and this is the effort I put in and this is the value or the implications, just from an educational. I found when people feel like they're teaching, that seems to make it a much easier thing to do. So you're not big noting, you're just informing, teaching, guiding, you know, more in that space. It seems to be much easier for people to lean into. Is that right for you, avoid improvisers?
Absolutely.
Yeah? And if your head nods. Yeah. Now, what I would counsel you on when you do it, like you think, okay, if I am going to put a resume together, or I'm going to, at the end of a month, I want people to be aware of what I've accomplished, you can put down what you've done. Because your ID is all about doing the work, you can put down what you've done. The magic is to just, before you do that, put down what you've done and then step back and think, and what was the value of what I've done? Like, play it out. What, as a result of what I've done, what was the value to the team, the business, the relationships, the strategic effort that we're doing? What was the implications or the value? Think of it like someone said to me one time, what's the product of the product? What's the value of the thing? You know, the value of what you've done. So it's just what will come naturally is the first step. What have I done? The second part is, what's the value of that? Share the value part. So an example, you can say, well, we've got a list of things that we said we were going to do, and you know, I've reached out to those, you know, in terms of, say we're going to do some initiative, we've got to reach out to 100 people and set up all these webinars to educate them. They're early in career. We're going to onboard all these people into the company. So I've connected with the 100 people. We've done the webinars. It's all been done. That was my accomplishment. Yes, it was. And that to a lot of people, I'd just go stick in a box. It's like doing what you said you would do. It's meeting the need, like good on you. I've also been busy, you know. But if you step back and now sort of go, what was the value of what you did? So the value might be that you've done it and dramatically accelerated the onboarding of these people. Maybe no one left as a result of it. Maybe you got insights from it that are going to help reshape the way you go forward in future. Like what we learned from this is that in future we could hire less people, go about it differently, a different type of person. And so what are the implications from what you've done? And when you speak to the value, it has much more insight in it. It's a different energy that successfully gets the attention of the people that you want to get the attention of. But focus on the value, and that will be not only then helping others understand you and what you've done, but they'll have a better appreciation for the significance of it. A lot of people, if they are just communicating what they've done, they go, well, I did that and nothing came of it. But yeah, but you've got to put it in a currency that's going to matter to others. If you're not sharing it and put it in that currency, don't rely on other people to do it for you, because they just won't. They're too busy and consumed by their own stuff. You've got to make it like blindingly obvious to them. Yeah, Ian, great point. Not just the what, but the so what. That's another way of saying it. All right, guys. So with that, there's so much more we could share, but we are out of time. Thank you for today. It was I hope you know, to Tracy and Seema and Scott in particular, you got some direct insights that will be valuable to you. Let us know how you go. And, you know, if there's more that people want to share, let us know. We can easily extend this topic into December, given that we'll probably only get the one meeting in December. We've got some other things we can cover as well. But if there are still things on your mind that you'd like to talk about from a future proofing of your career point of view, let us know and we can factor that in. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care, everybody.